Hey, this is Ross Payton with Role Playing Public Radio. This is RPPR episode 170, Inhuman Resources. We're going to be talking about Control, the SCP Foundation, and other evil-ish, or maybe not necessarily evil, but usually evil, giant corporate or government institutions and bureaucracies. We are getting closer to October, so, we want to talk about horror. And our guest this episode is Thad.
Hey, this is Thad.
And we've both
so is it October, Ross, or is it Bureauctober?
Ooh,
bureaucracy. That's the joke I was making.
It's a very spoopy joke.
Don't patronize me.
We've both been playing Control, which is a game ripped out of my brain and stone.
Yeah, if you have never been around Ross Payton or listened to games that Ross has run or had Ross recommend media to you, just play Control and you will get that experience bundled all into one.
Yeah, basically, it is very much SCP Foundation / Ruin / House of Leaves / Brutalist Architecture. Although.
God.
It's probably not.
Like if brutalist architecture was angry at
it's actually probably late modernist. McMansion Hell had a great post of explaining what brutalism was and was not, and it's actually turns out to be that there's a lot of styles people mistake as brutalism but are not. It's sort of like basically in the 50s.
Yes, but if everyone calls it brutalism,
yeah, because it's concrete and it has squares. Like it's more than that. It turns out. There's a whole bunch of concrete squares.
Defy that.
Well, look, I'm not the expert. Kay Wagner at McMansion Hell is, so I will try to link that. I guess shout out to that.
I need to check back in with them. I've forgotten about that.
She was one of the first people I backed on Patreon, and I still do because
Nice.
It real good. So first up, we do have a bit of news. I just want to remind everybody, the RPPR Patreon, we had a really good after hours episode recently where Caleb and I went over Grim Tooth's Traps 2 and discussed the
I love that clip you posted on your Twitter.
I'll put a link to the clip. It's going over one of the mini traps that we discuss in the episode. So if you have them back, you can get that for $2 a month. We also have early access episodes, get episodes a week early, actual play episodes a week early, or at the $10 level, you get the online actual plays that I will run for people or other members of the RPPR cast, or occasionally Jeff Barber, creator of the RPG Blue Planet and Upwind. In fact, and plus you get to be on the Discord, talk with us, and ask questions of the RPPR cast for our questing for answers bonus podcast for the Patreon. So a lot of cool stuff on there, and we're working on more cool stuff for the Patreon. So be sure to by the way, speaking of horror and jokes and puns, what do you call what did the werewolf YouTuber say to his viewers?
I don't know.
Like and subscribe.
God. Oh, okay. Yeah.
By the way, we're actually trying out webcams just so we can see each other and communicate better for the first time.
Ross got to see my. We're not in the same state, but Ross got to see my face upon hearing that.
It was pretty good. We should talk about the main. So that's sort of the news about RPPR. I, of course, I'm on Twitter, shitposting and making observations about RPGs. So check me out there at Ross Payton. Thad is on.
Yes, I am also on Twitter and intermittently on the Instagram at Thaddeus Strange.
So because this is why I thought of you for this episode, because you've been tweeting about
because I started ranting about how Control had been stolen from your subconscious.
You added me. So I feel like it stole from the SCP Foundation way more. And there's actually a friend of mine, Vince, who is an editor for the SCP Wiki. And he was like,
I think I'm mutuals with Vince on the Twitter.
Yeah. And he was complaining in a group chat recently about like all these articles talking about, Control is definitely influenced by SCP Foundation, but they don't link to the wiki. They don't link to us. I'm like, okay, yeah, fair enough.
I mean, I on the one hand, I get that pain, but at the same time, there's a part of me that's like if you haven't been to the SCP Foundation, what are you even doing on the internet?
Well, I mean, why? Yeah, if you haven't been to the SCP Foundation, but you're really interested in control,
go there right now.
Yeah, basically, that is the first thing.
In fact, early shout out, the SCP Foundation. I don't know how you got this deep into RPPR without going there, but go there.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's probably more for the casual Control fan. So, Control's a new video game out for all the big consoles and the PC. From Remedy Entertainment, who did Alan Wake, Quantum Break, Max Payne. And so basically you play this woman, Jessie Faden, who comes into the Federal Bureau of Control, the FBC, or is it the Federal Control?
You got it.
And it's in New York City in this giant building that's invisible to people except for people who can mysteriously find it.
If you know where it is, you can find it, but otherwise you have to like stumble into it accidentally or other various things.
It's called the Oldest House, and it's clearly some extra dimensional entity of its own right. You know, it's much larger on the inside than on the outside. Very House of Leaves. And the Federal Bureau of Control, they keep weird shit from destroying the universe, and particularly America. And although I do feel and she's looking for her brother who's been kidnapped by the bureau, and then she gets basically a magic gun and has to kill.
You'll see, like it happens pretty early.
Yeah, and she has to fight off this invasion from an extra dimensional contagion mimetic virus called the Hiss that's turns people into like weird
generic video game bad guys.
There's also a bit of Annihilation, the movie in it, in the fungal part.
That's a good that is something I really appreciated, that it wasn't just one thing going on. Like there was
they ripped off a lot of really
stuff that they're dealing with.
They ripped off a lot of good. They have good taste.
Great, good writers borrow, great writers just completely rip off.
Basically. And so
well, it's like how Alan Wake was just ripping off from Stephen King and Lovecraft and a bunch of other stuff.
Mostly Stephen King,
but they threw a little bit of Stephen King is just making a lot of Lovecraft references in a lot of his work too.
Yeah. So she is trying to find her brother, trying to navigate this place, and doing typical video game things. But I feel like the sort of aesthetic is it's kind of watered down SCP. It's watered down.
Yeah.
Weird.
It trims a lot of the fat of SCP.
I think it's blander because every weird thing is a normal consumer object that just for inexplicable reasons has weird powers that do things. And some of them are powers that people can wield if they're chosen. Objects of power. Some of them are just things that will kill you in weird ways, and those are called altered items. And yeah, so it's and there's also these things called altered world events, which are things that happen outside of the Oldest House. So because in the SCP, it's a fan made wiki. It's this community movement where people just make up shit and then they vote on if it's really cool and spooky. And so you get a wide variety of SCPs. There's no like one canon. You just kind of there's the top rated entries. And the SCP, by the way, stands for Secure, Contain, and Protect, I think.
Yes.
And it's
got it in one.
It's also this massive vague bureaucracy that looks for weird things and contains them and secures them. And
there are also within the SCP universe like other organizations that they butt heads with or weird cults or whatever.
Every fandom needs like alternate universe stuff and spin-offs and all that good stuff. These are part of the sort of the latest versions of this sort of trope, which comes up in RPGs again and again, which is the giant evil corporation / government bureaucracy that is monolithic and is aware of the supernatural or the sci-fi element, whatever the X factor is for the setting, and controls it. And typically, this is
your Agent So Shield.
Yeah.
Your
X-Files, Shield is one of these types of things. Yeah.
Oh yeah. People forget that Shield is sprawling and nefarious. I don't know.
Yeah, they brought it up for Winter Soldier, and then yep, all right, we're done with it.
Yeah, but they brought it up and then they hand waved. It's like, oh no, it's because that Hydra was.
Yeah, we got rid of Hydra.
There's anything fun. It's not that there's anything fundamentally messed up about Shield. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. So in Control, it's kind of this sort of, I guess I'm just gonna call them city in a bottle games, which is sort of a popular pretty dominant genre or type of survival horror game where you're in this contained environment and it's sort of, there's lots of people, and then City in a Bottle has been shook up, like, everything's been destroyed, everything, the hisses over
your Resident Evil 2, or even, the first one, if you just contain it to like a weird mansion laboratory in a bottle.
I would think System Shock 2 is actually probably the first one that sort of got this formula,
the prototypical one.
But you find messages that are sort of how they do the environmental storytelling, like, oh no, I'm being attacked, to the humorous, oh, somebody messed with the photocopier again, and
the lovely mixture of mundane and weird mundane.
And so basically you go through this environment, you get it's sort of elements of Metroidvania where you get different power-ups that allow you to access different areas, and as you complete that, that's all fine and good, but it's obviously portrayed as this sort of monolithic institution that cannot be, like, it's sort of like, I guess, sort of as a commentary in a sense of our own sort of worldview now, that we can't picture a world without these you can't have, there's no way there would be a world with magic and there wouldn't be some corporation or government bureaucracy regulating it, or regulating and exploiting it.
A need to control it.
And so I kind of want to talk about that. Like, in Control, the bureaucracy is portrayed in sort of a neutral point of view, as sort of a
it's a lot like it is interesting that this sort of, like, the reference that you reach for is the evil organization, since in this game it is much more neutrally played. Like, it's not as, even Delta Green, like, looking at that as an organization is a lot more like brutal, a lot more intentionally brutal than the Bureau in the game is.
They sort of portray themselves as a necessity. Like, you can't have, like they say, without us the world would cease to exist. These things that are out of control are so dangerous that we have to be here and we have to contain them. We have
sure, it all rests on you, Mr. Stark. Okay, tell me another one.
Or Jesse, like, you have to take over and stop the hiss, and keep that from kids. And you could do obviously a whole thing about the colonial undertones of this, so the sort of neoliberal undertones, actually, more than anything else. We have to have these technocratic organizations that control people. And
oh man, I should have grabbed my Foucault from over there. We could crack open some, like, Discipline and Punish. Talk
there's
about
literally a
panopticon. Have a good
time.
There's a panopticon. It's like, wow, we're being on the nose today, are we?
Yeah, exactly. And and they're far from the first one to reference that. I think there's probably a dozen of panopticons in SCP. And
because there's so many, like, sorry, just you mentioned SCP again, and I'm like, oh yeah, one of the most obvious references they make is to in the game there's an object that has to be watched constantly, which is one of the most famous SCPs. Look it up, it's easy to find.
And
there's so much that's really on the nose.
And SCP, by the way, is also sort of like the whole conceit of it is that it is written in the language of bureaucracy. Every you don't write. There are people do write stories, obviously, but the main wiki writes these in sort of protocol.
They're the form.
It's like a bureaucratic procedure. It's no different than, like, renewing your driver's license or requesting a transfer to a different department. Is like, here's how you deal with this object that can teleport people into the sun, and here's how
one of the great bases for I would argue why the SCPs are so striking is it starts with the most mundane information. Because like every entry of
what's it look like?
The list is it starts with, like, the containment procedures. Because it's you get this this contextless flow of, like, here's a bunch of things that may be very normal or maybe very strange,
and it's all about the implication.
Further, and then it's all of them are set up in a way that gives us great opportunity to, like, tease info or to think about, like, how would you have to deal with a magic coffee maker.
It's the super, like, that's a great, I think that's why the SCP is so appeals to so many people, why it's so popular, is because we're all used to the language of bureaucracy. And I think all of us now realize that a lot of these procedures are necessary because, like, I saw a news story. Some expert was commenting about like an airplane crash or the Boeing 737 crash, 6 months ago or whatever. He's like, yeah, all these regulations for aircraft are written in blood. Like, we do these things because we didn't used to do them, and then somebody died, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we should do this." And so, like, the SCP,
yeah, there's a reason that we that anybody who like reads or watches, depending on how foolish you are, Atlas Shrugged, and they're like, "Oh, I will test my new train metal by sending cars over a bridge."
Yeah,
it's like there are reasons that's a bad idea.
Yeah. Exactly. And so it's sort of like we're surrounded by bureaucracy. We have to deal with it every single day of our life. And
the real monster is the bureaucracy.
Well, it's not even, it is the monster because, I mean, even ones that are quote unquote good, like the FBC, do all kinds of atrocities. They like kidnap a child and basically torture him until he goes insane.
Oh man, I had it.
Yeah, and it's totally without oversight. Like, there's no one.
Because the government has literally forgotten that they exist. Like that, because it's one of those things where they're tertiarily connected to the government because they started as a government agency and they still use that as the name. But like,
well, they still get funding.
Yeah, they still apparently get funding, but there's no oversight or accountability,
right? Because
to
nobody is aware of it. Like, the president isn't going to be able to call them and be like, "Yeah, don't do that," or like, "There's no congressional hearings, there's no anything like that." And that's presented as good, like, "Oh, they can't handle it," And again, it's this sort of like idea that these bureaucracies of people with college degrees can control everything and should make all the shots. People who are distant, and that's certainly worth something critiquing. But
there was one of the last little like hidden room things I found in the game was there was this great little note written by someone. Who was saying like it might not be a good thing that we're approaching all of these things with a very like hard scientist like a scientific and like a trying to like almost utilitarian outlook. Like, maybe we need to think more in ritualistic ways for how to deal with some of these things instead of like how to contain and exploit them. And I'm like, oh, that's a neat thing to see the game throw out there, like an awareness of like not just in the normal like, oh, the hubris of this or that person caused the Bureau to have these problems, but also just like, oh, there's further things we could question. It's a nice little moment.
And that is a good point. And the thing is, the thing we don't even realize, like, it's just implicit in the setting, is that the idea that this bureaucracy, like, created by humans and everything, just by structuring in through bureaucratic regulation and everything, is powerful enough to like control and contain supernatural shit, things that are supposedly transcendent beyond the rules of beyond our comprehension, yet we can write regulations that are like, okay, put Cthulhu in a box and do this process, and he won't kill and eat everybody and drive us mad because we have bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is our, in a sense, a greater god than Cthulhu or any irrational force out there.
And I mean, especially if we're talking about like ways to flavor games with these sorts of things, I think that like looking to whatever personal experience one has with bureaucracy is the first sort of way to mine this. And it doesn't have like, not everybody's had like corporate jobs or whatever, but even just like, I think about like working in when I worked in a grocery store, like the first job I had, and the ways that like, oh, you have to follow this particular planogram instruction to put things in their particular place, and you can't change any of this, and you will be graded on it. And like, if you screw it up, then it affects your ability to get a raise or whatever. And just like those little implied systemic threats, just in small ways, are, I feel like, a good thing to juxtapose. Like the more like bizarre horror in a lot of ways, the smaller threats of what the constraints of a job can do to you can be worse in some ways, because Cthulhu will kill everyone, but if I get fired, I will starve.
Right. And that's also the other thing is that the bureaucracy is, again, a massive machine, and we're all cogs in it, and we're all replaceable. And that's why they do
Which
that.
Is why it's great to map onto horror.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're all replaceable, except for obviously in Control. The whole storyline revolve. Oh, by the way, we're gonna have some spoilers in this.
Yeah, tons of spoilers.
Yeah. So
we can't help it.
In Control, everyone is replaceable except for like certain named characters in a sense, because in some cases they're people who hoarded knowledge, department leaders, like the scientist Dr. Darling or whatever, who basically like, where the fuck is he? We really need he's the only one who knew what was going on.
The guy who like he casts maybe the longest shadow of any of the named characters in the game. I don't know, him and Trench I'd say go back and forth. Trench is the director, the former director. And Dr. Darling being the former head of research, of research.
And that's basically Darling was abusing his position. He was basically not like these institutions are supposed to have what they call institutional knowledge, which is the idea that even leaders, even people high up on the organization chart can be replaced because there's institutional knowledge of procedures, so that if somebody dies or is eaten by Cthulhu, then the second person on the org chart can step in their shoes and like take over after like reading their diary or whatever. And so that's sort of like, but obviously, because of perhaps because there was no oversight in the Bureau, Darling was able to be like, run it like a private fiefdom. And obviously probably got people killed maybe.
I mean, this is one of those things that makes for a good tension in like a conspiracy leaning game, is that idea of what happens when someone makes themselves indispensable and is then disposed of.
Yeah.
What does that cause?
But Control makes a very explicit thing saying that no, some people are literally chosen. Some people are supernaturally chosen by forces beyond, it's kind of implied either Odin. There's some sort of Norse mythology building in there because
are we talking about Ati?
Ati, and when you get down to the Foundation, there's very much a runic symbol.
Yeah, you see the little
world tree Yggdrasil sort of carved or sort of etched into one of these stone pillars, sort of implying that the old house is Yggdrasil, which is sort of interesting. But this person is this chosen. The leader of the Bureau is the director, and the director is chosen by the board and by the service weapon, which are very supernatural things.
I love the board is maybe my favorite thing in the game.
Because it's a very good album cover.
There are a couple of
mob,
messages that you get from the board that are actually hilarious. Because it's like an interdimensional creature trying to communicate with you and failing.
Yeah, I do. The board was a pretty good highlight, but the director is chosen, and like the whole plot, the whole reason like your brother was kidnapped and tortured, essentially abused, was because they thought he was a potential replacement. Like they had to find someone special, someone worthy. Not anybody could be the director. They couldn't just train someone up. And so there's this whole program to replace another director. And,
although I will push back on this slightly, because I like the way that the Chosen One thing was deployed in Control. Because again, further spoilers, like at least the way that I read it by the end of the game is that they were not at least the brother and sister were not born special. It's just that because of the experience they went through with interdimensional nonsense, they became special.
Well, sure.
I like that better than like born destiny at the very least.
I wasn't saying they were born that way. I'm saying that.
No, I know. It's something I've been thinking about a lot in comparison to other video games. And like the way that it deploys its sort of chosen oneness is much more interesting to me, because it seems like it chooses who's available and works.
Yeah,
and the brother and sister happen to be the best ones so far.
Yeah. The brother and sister are worthy because they basically survived a season of Stranger Things.
Yes.
And,
oh man.
Yeah. So they did that, and then they chose. But you can't just have any schmuck. They can't just have the second in command. The aide de camp of the director grab the magic gun and become the director. It was implied that if you pick up the gun and you're not worthy, you die.
Yeah.
So the idea that they spent decades looking for these candidates for replacement is like the whole major theme.
Yeah. And also there's the sort of implication that it's like their attempt to hack the system.
Mm-hmm.
Because we need to have someone who can handle this weapon, so let's try and make them happen, which also has its part in setting off the nearly world-destroying events of the game.
Well, I think wasn't making it happen so much as like well, I guess you could say it was making it happen. It was like Trench realizing there had to be somebody worthy because he just happened to be worthy. They didn't realize this with the Trench is the second director. The first director
was like Northmore or something like that.
Yeah, Northmore. Northmore died.
Trench, by the way, being the person who is the same actor as Max Payne, which cracks me up.
And basically, he gets in there. Trench realizes if I die, what will happen to the Bureau? Because I've seen other people pick up the gun and they just die. Will there be somebody worthy to succeed me? And he creates this program to try and find a new candidate. And they try to get Jesse. They don't. They get Dylan instead, the brother. And the brother does not respond well to being in a cage controlled by this institution, essentially, because he has some sort of latent psychic powers or some shit.
Yeah.
And then the game happens, basically.
And then bad things happen, and everyone they don't have a good time.
No, they don't have a good time. I mean, player has a good time, except for some of the boss fights. But so Control says very explicitly that there are they sort of push back against that by saying that there are very special people who cannot be replaced by bureaucratic procedure alone, that there is magic, there is something that transcends that. So I find that interesting. And that's, yeah. So yeah, Control's probably, I mean, it's kind of almost propaganda for bureaucracy, saying you have to have a bureaucracy, otherwise magic would just kill everybody, you know?
I don't know. I agree, but I also like its take on it better than a lot of others' takes on bureaucracy in some ways. Like, because by the end game, like an awareness of the fact that it needs to be more open and cooperative seems to have developed.
Jesse's the new director, and she is going to lead it into a new era. And,
like the Bureau is going to continue, and that does have a lot of implications of like, oh, there's a necessity to this. But like, I don't know, maybe I'm just too much of a sunny dispositioned optimist that I am clearly. But
I know
like,
what I would do.
There is part of me that's like, oh, it seems like people are learning lessons, and that's good.
I feel though that they're not gonna. It's definitely an interesting like where they set up, but like for me, I feel like they're going to keep it as this sort of dysfunctional bureaucracy that like I feel like, I mean, the Federal Bureau of Control is basically a self-selecting society of people living in a post-scarcity economy because they have access to like unlimited
magic
power.
Nonsense.
There's something powering the building. That's kept in a furnace essentially.
Although sometimes people feed
a reactor.
Although sometimes people try to sacrifice other people to the furnace, and also you shouldn't drink the water because they basically stuff in it.
They get stuff from the outside world, but they don't need it per se. It sounds like they could just exist forever in that building. So they clearly aren't worried about food, even though they're in a lockdown. So I would have it like the Federal Bureau of Control becomes this parallel society that like is fucking weird as shit. And
like, what happens if the lockdown never ends and you just have people who have to live inside of? Wait, isn't that just Ruin?
Well, Ruin is different. Ruin is not out yet, so that's something different with it too. The thing with so I would make it weirder. I would get it weirder and weirder. Then they're like, these people are like, oh, we have all this magic power, we have all this amazing stuff that nobody else can do, and look at how shitty the real world is. Let's go and fix that, or like let's take it over, because fuck those people, those ignorant peasants, how dare they? I mean, it's gonna go one of those ways. Sorry,
that takes me back to Heroes of New Arcadia, that like But yeah, I mean, that is one of the things that I think, especially like using the like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. example is or even the classic like why doesn't Reed Richards share his nonsense with the world, is like having all these things but insisting that the world stay familiar to like contemporary reality.
Yeah, and I know that's a conceit of these fictions, is to make it like relatable, that like this could happen in your world, but like there's limits to what that can do. So I feel like by making it an institutional thing, or like making it like this. Yeah, that's kind of the problem with these. It's sort of the problem with having an ongoing like comic book, is like you can't have an ending. Like you just, the story keeps having a middle, and and,
well, because it takes certain anytime this conceit is sort of deployed, it takes the structures of society as certain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like the only ways. Yeah, the only ways things will change. The only ways things will change is if it goes on long enough for like time to change around it. Like looking at the Marvel universe change over time. Yeah. Like that. So the only time social changes will occur is when they occur in the real world outside of the comic.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so I think that's sort of the problem is that they portray these bureaucracies as inevitable and eternal. And I think in tabletop role-playing games, you don't have these constraints of being like a major media property that has to keep cranking out, you know, like there may be Control 2 and Control 3, and I know they're doing Control DLC, and so obviously they have to keep the conceit going for a while. Yeah. And so I feel like when tabletop game, you have more freedom to do that. So I think we need to think of these bureaucracies in tabletop RPGs as flawed human organizations that are usually evil, and that's fine to have a very evil, very villainous structure organization, but like they're not perfect. They make mistakes, and they make mistakes in ways that are not like, they're not synonymous with like the evil villain who is very, you know, like
not Captain Planet villains.
Well, they may be Captain Planet villains, but they're not going to be like at the whim of one guy. They're not going to be led by, if they're led by the Joker, they're going to fire the Joker sooner or later, because like he's going to make mistakes, and there's internal pressures, there's internal
because outside of comic book logic, there's no reason people would keep working for the Joker.
Yeah, exactly. And like if you're an evil CEO and there's this group of heroes fighting you, and you keep losing against them, you're just going to like find a way to either hide that you've lost all these battles, or like you're going to get fired because you've lost so many times and you're a failure, and someone wants to take your spot. Or you're just going to like, there's not going to be like a climactic, and you're not going to like throw everything the corporation has. You're not going to keep getting rewarded for failure.
Yeah.
When given these sort of pressures, if there's other people who have some sort of counterbalance against you, unless you have total control of it, in which case it's not really a bureaucracy, it's a dictatorship. You know, I think there's sort of a difference between like a dictatorship run by the fiat of one person versus a bureaucracy with the differing departments that have power over each other. Like, I think that's what we should clarify. It's like, they're not the same thing, and when you make your villainous organization or RPG, you should think, is this a dictatorship run by like one person or a small group of people, and whatever they say goes, and they can change their mind whenever, you know, the M. Bison school of leadership. Or
to me, it was Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly. Or is this like an actual, like, does it have an actual org chart, and they follow rules, and like if somebody oversteps those rules, they'll be punished by their own internal process.
Honestly, you know? I think that thought of an org chart is really, I think, central to one of the things that I've been thinking about in terms of like how to map this kind of, or the things that I like best about Control onto like running a tabletop game is like that interconnectedness between of like it's not like Cobra or something where it's just do what that's Skeletor. No, I can't do a Cobra Commander voice off the top of my head. I'm getting old. But thinking about,
Skeletor was also a dictatorship. Like, do what Skeletor says.
Yes, we do not have a human resources department. But yeah, like thinking about like what different departments would be, like what different departments would be needed, what kinds of personalities are running them, and how those like work with or against each other. Like, because when I look at like the way that the plot for Control takes off, like it has its roots in like them, you know, the Bureau interfering with these siblings' lives and all that. But like if you look at a lot of it is just like the choices that the people in power in these various departments make, of like Darling to be very focused on his way of doing things in the research department, and Trench being very focused on like him, like even one of the things that character talks about a lot is only being able to fail himself, like relying solely on himself. And of course, when he gets corrupted and when he fails, like, he's just failing himself, but because he made himself indispensable, all of these dominoes fall. Right. And because of that like interconnectedness, we see like it sets up a fun little plot for us to explore.
Yeah, exactly. and and you also have elements of that early on where like you go to the maintenance department and they're like, oh yeah, these guys look down on us, but they need us for the power. And then you have to go through the different performers, getting the different department heads or surviving department heads essentially to get on your side. And that's definitely an element in that. So like in terms of so think about motivation. So any bureaucracy essentially is motivated by the survival. Like they're created to do some sort of mission, like to
it is its own entity.
To control
I
things.
often
to control
one of the running bits that I have with Kara is we talk about sometimes how dealing with a bank is like dealing with a demon. Like you have to be very careful and you have to pay attention to what its rules and what its words specifically mean, or else you will end up screwed over. Yeah. And I think honestly that's probably true for just bureaucracies in general. If they have power over you, it's like dealing with a magical creature.
But one that is like bound by certain laws and certain behavior for the most part.
That is part of
obviously
the deal.
There's inefficiencies and whatever, but like the bureaucracy, the bureau's created to like investigate these things, these weird items that have magic powers. But then like it quickly becomes like it has to survive. And so like there's a lot of memos you find in the book like, oh, here's what we can do for a budget. As long as we don't ask for anything truly outrageous, we'll just get whatever we want. So
I can't believe neither of us have mentioned the Men in Black this whole time.
But like every bureaucracy's mission becomes survival. Like if you don't worry about whatever will keep getting you funding, or like legislative power or whatever it is that allows it to exist as an organization with some sort of power and influence or whatever, it will obviously fall apart. And so every person within that bureaucracy to a degree gets rewarded by helping the bureau
helping it justify itself to whatever power structure it exists within.
And so like you get these then you develop these situations where people develop like motivations that are just like just like not necessarily opposed to the main mission, but like sort of just going off in its own direction, or like something that like, oh well, obviously I mean one of the greatest things to talk about bureaucracies is The Wire, because it talks about the bureaucracies of law enforcement, because it's like these cops aren't, they're ostensibly here to protect us, but what that winds up for them is that they have stats. They have
what are they? How are they held accountable? What does that mean within their institution?
Right, and how are they rewarded? And they get rewarded by making more arrests, by closing cases. And so like they look for shortcuts. They're trying to up their stats. They're trying to like
honestly, one of the best things you can do to figure out how to maybe break your fictional bureaucracy or maybe your real bureaucracy is to just remember that people min-max things. Like in real life. Like they will find whatever rule can be exploited and someone will exploit it. And like that happens in law enforcement and it happens in weird evil organizations. Oh, did I just repeat myself? Never mind.
And also they don't exist in a vacuum. No, like we're talking about one organization that is within a larger power structure, some society. We're not talking about, there are games and there are settings where the bureaucracy and it is everything. It's the entire world. And those are, like you're living in the company town, paying on company script. The computer loves you. The computer is your friend, that kind of thing. We're not talking about that. We're talking about like the bureaucracy is not omnipotent. It is not omniscient. It's very powerful in this one area or whatever it does.
Yeah. It has its niche.
It has its niche, yeah. And so if it fucks up, there will be consequences for it, I was recently running a Eclipse Phase game and people were like, well, okay, so here's this resort that the Hypercorp has. And it's like, oh, well, they're clearly spying and reading the minds of all the people that they have, with the psychosurgery. Like, no, they're not. They would, if they got caught, it would be really bad because like these people actually have lawyers and it's a Hypercorp society. They have courts and, lawyers.
They're also trying to screw each other over, but that means they have to be careful about how they screw each other over.
Yeah.
because you can
like it's run by one corporation.
Your opponents.
Yeah, it's run by one corporation. So like if the other corporations found out this corporation fucked up really bad, they would exploit it. Now, of course, there are situations in real life, especially where the corporations all agree to work with each other so they can just, control everything.
What are you? But that would be almost like a monopoly, Ross. And that's
yeah, it's not an oligarchy, but what is it? Where it's like
I can't grab the word. Like it's in my head somewhere.
But
when a bunch of companies agree not to directly compete with each other, so that they can all control what's going on. Oh, America! That's what it was.
So you do have situations like that, but those typically don't show, and so the consequences may not be like catastrophic for it, but like even giant corporations seem inevitable until they fail. Like Lehman Brothers was a massive Wall Street company, and then it collapsed in 2008 very quickly. So like, sometimes things are outside of the control of even these bureaucracies. So, I think so. You keep that in mind that they're not.
It seems like it was just yesterday. It seems like it was just yesterday that the Netscape Navigator was on every computer, but now,
yeah, exactly. Things change, and so they don't have this kind of thing. I
was thinking one of the other big things, like in terms of like thinking about interconnectedness, like having your organizational chart, and also just thinking about the consequence, I think is one of the most important things to consider when if you're wanting to make it more grounded, because like sort of what we were talking about earlier with the fact that these things never end up actually broadly changing the real world is because comic books will put a barrier on how far consequences can go.
Yeah, because it has to be in stasis.
So I think like one of the big things is to, even if you're just starting at the small scale, like what is the consequence of this department collapsing because an experiment goes wrong or because they run out of budget or whatever, and like what dominoes does that knock over, and how can that like cause interesting things to happen within your organization?
Yeah, and just think about whatever leader within that department that is the one in charge of like taking the players down or whatever, the player's the primary antagonist. He has he or she, whoever this bad person is, they have their own sort of internal pressures and internal like motivations. Like they're going to be like, well, all right, so I have to do this secret research project. If I get it under budget, I get a reward. And like, oh shit, some heroes blew it up. Well, I guess I could pay assassins. Send our corporate assassins to go hunt them down and kill them, but it's going to eat into the
budget. Like
it's going to come out of the budget. Yeah.
Can I afford the good assassins, or are we going to have to like talk to the janitor who moonlights?
I guess I could.
Oof.
What if I asked the assassins to frame them for have them kill someone random and then frame the character?
Is it cheaper to frame people or
yeah. Yeah. Can we get a memo on that? Can we have a meeting on that?
Can someone do a cost benefit analysis on framing versus murdering? Hold on, let me write up that memo.
I feel like we should already know this, Susan. You're really letting me down here.
This should be in our standard operating procedure file, and I don't see it there. Can we have an audit of our?
And another thing to also keep in mind is bureaucracies are not the same. Like not every bureaucracy has its own. Like there's this whole thing about company culture, and that's sort of the whole thing. It turns out like the Federal Bureau of Control is very different than like Majestic 12 in Delta Green, and Delta Green in the modern era where it's taken over Majestic 12. Or for example, the Technocracy or Pentex in the old World of Darkness, which are other two evil corporate giant bureaucracies. I'm familiar with, having tainted my brain with World of Darkness lore.
But what about Palladium evil corporations, Ross? You got anything for us?
Oh yeah, you name one. Name a Palladium evil corporation.
I don't know. I'm asking.
Exactly. I don't know any.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they're corporations. But
you're the one who has poisoned your brain with this stuff. I merely
Palladium doesn't write up about corporations. They write them up to have gun stats, and that's it.
I was told that it was a thinking man's game, Ross.
It is a thinking man game. You have to think about everything in order to.
You have to think about everything because all they did was tell you how to roll dice.
Yeah, and gave you stats for robots and laser pistols, and 30 character classes ranging from demigod to hobo and expect them to all
right, I am the demigod of hobos, and it is more difficult for me to go down a rope than it is for me to climb.
I'm a vagabond. I can eyeball a fella as my power.
Why did I open this can of worms?
Yeah, you did. Yeah, thanks.
Actually, something else that occurred to me is one of the things to keep in mind is that a lot of these don't have to be this like the control or the SCP or the Delta Green or the Majestic 12 type of conspiracy or like organization. Because if you want to look at obnoxious bureaucracies, the sphere that I have spent the most time in my life is a good one to look to as well. Higher education.
Oh yeah, academia. Yeah.
Yeah, because the cross sections of like people who are your workaday adjuncts versus people who are trying to get tenure, and then just multiply that by weird mystical nonsense, and you can have all sorts of fun in terms of people who hate each other and kind of want to backbite, but also we're studying Cthulhu tomes. I feel like there's a good way to mash those things together that could lead to all sorts of fun. Or like, what do you do when you have access to the Necronomicon, but also you live the life where you sort of have to sell your blood to make rent sometimes? Like, what sort of...
so like a modern-day version of the Armitage Files, essentially?
Yeah.
Or Bookhounds of London, yeah. Trail of Cthulhu, I think, has done a couple things about that theme. But you know what? Actually, the Laundry. That's probably the easiest.
Oh, yeah. How did we?
That's the easiest one. And that's obviously if you're talking about bureaucracy and RPGs. From what I remember reading the rules, it's certainly the best thing because you have to make requisition rules and you have legal limits of what you can and can't do.
Do the players actually have to fill out forms?
I think it's abstracted to skill checks, but like you still have to make the skill checks. Like, So
actually, that is something to keep in mind is how like for creating and using organizations like this, if you're using a system that just straight up has a bureaucracy check like Delta Green, like thinking of ways you can use that to mess with people.
Delta Green does have rules for bureaucracy, like in terms of like requisitioning things.
But even then, like if you're bouncing off of something like Delta Green or Call of Cthulhu, like how you can use bureaucracy skill checks, I think is because in navigating these kinds of structures, knowing the bureaucracy is in a lot of ways better than having social skills.
I mean, it technically is a social skill.
But I mean, like face-to-face social skills might not help. Like your face, for example, if we're just talking like general player styles, your face might not be as useful in socially navigating things as your characters or NPCs who know the bureaucracy and have skills for dealing with it.
It's certainly also a substitute for research skills. Like it replaced library use, in Delta Green essentially from Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, that actually might be a good way of messing with players because trying to use a regular library use skill might not be useful in a more like a system that you don't understand the bureaucracy of. Oh yeah, no, exactly. Like that could be a good way of sort of giving people false leads or leading them into little like interesting traps and things. Or even in academia, how to make a request to get access to something that's off limits to the public, Yeah. Can I act? Yeah, like the Necronomicon's not on a shelf. You have to or just trying to get a grant. Yeah, it's in a climate controlled room. Yeah, or getting a grant, but like it's in a climate controlled room, obviously behind lock and key, and so you have to make a special request to be able to read it and like sign a liability waiver. Blah blah blah. Yeah, the sort of academic bureaucracy stuff. Like I have some notes from like way back when we were playing Heroes of New Arcadia because I had like background ideas for where James had come from, and I had this thought of he was definitely on like a supervillain watch list from grad school, which has to exist in this world. Like there have to be lists at every school that are like either shared or that the government has access to about who seems like they might create a monster. I mean, that's a really good idea. Like, think about a plot hook. Well, you found the list, and you have to go headhunting. Like, you need to go recruit people. Or just or there's like students who like want to end up on the list because they think it's actually kind of good for their resume in some ways. So they like keep trying to one up each other with. And that could be a good thing to have happen in the background, and that like causes some catastrophe. So it's not like not an intentional malice thing, but just the way that this competition created a stress that boiled over into an interdimensional gateway opened or something. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like that's how Silicon Valley headhunters get the best recruits. Like if you're not on the list,
the like white hat, black hat hacker stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you're not on the list, like you ain't shit. Like
I'd forgotten about that until we were having this conversation, and that was an idea. I don't even remember if I ever mentioned that to you before, but
no, you haven't. I would have remembered that. Yeah. That was really good.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, you know, if you're working on a base rate or second ed, you know, I'm around.
At some point. Maybe after.
But yeah, no, I mean, I think that is one of the things to think of is like, if you don't feel comfortable creating like you don't feel like you can create a convincing like government bureaucracy, like there are ways you can transfer more familiar to you like systems and like bureaucratic annoyances and nightmares over into whatever your fantastic world is.
Yeah. Well, also like. I think the main thing is people either play bureaucracies either as too incompetent or too competent.
Yeah.
Like they're often so competent and skilled and Illuminati, you know, conspiracy, like they're on you 24/7. They never make mistakes. They have the best people that money can buy, blah, 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 blah. They never fuck up. And so you're dead. If you go after them, you're dead.
Yeah.
It's just game over. And they're like, that's pretty boring. And obviously then the other thing is that they're comically incompetent. And they never
your G.I. Joe villain territory.
Yeah, exactly. And so either one is kind of boring. So like you need to make them flawed, but also in an interesting way. So I think the ways you can make them flawed is one, everyone in that bureaucracy is a cog and they have imperfect institutional knowledge.
The way to make it more believable is realize that, oh God, this is their job.
Well, it's not just their job, but also think about like the guy who's running who's like, oh, do I need to hire those assassins for those people? Like maybe the quarter ends and he's like, you've been promoted, you get a transfer. Oh, we had a fuck up in the other department. You need to go over to that department. It's like, really? I'm in the middle of something. It's like, it's fine. And so like the players just don't have anything to worry about because like the new guy comes in, he's like, I don't give a shit about any of this. Let's cancel it. I don't care.
You're saved by promotion.
Yeah, they say by promotion, just like bureaucratic like transfer. Like the guy who has a grudge against you just left.
Oh, you know? Man, is there like a bureaucracy mancer in Unknown Armies? Because I feel like this would be a thing. I need to look. I need to go back and look through my supplements.
I don't think there is one specifically on bureaucracies, but I mean there would be.
I just like I like that idea of like, oh no, we'll get the we'll slightly shift someone's place in an organization, and it causes all these other dominoes to fall.
I mean, also think about like what kind of behaviors, what kind of thing rewards the institution. Like what you know, the bureaucracy is trying to get funding. It's trying to get money either as a corporation or, you know, funding from the government itself as a government agent. So what would reward them? And so like, you know, for like, again, the cops get promotions because they close cases, even if it's the wrong person, even if it's a case that can't be prosecuted. If they close the case, then great. So evil bureaucracy, you know, like in terms of the Federal Bureau of Control, the people inside get promoted if they like find altered items, if they find objects of power, if they figure something out about it. Yeah.
Or sometimes just for like being the guy who shows up and like keeps doing the make work stuff. Like the guy in charge of the Panopticon, if I recall, like he talks about, I started out at a desk job and, you know, I kept at it and I eventually got promoted to management.
It's kind of like for the Bureau, especially, it's kind of got on a wartime footing. It's like if you just live long enough, you'll be promoted. So like
keep your head down.
Yeah, so there's like bold employees of the Bureau. There's old employees of the Bureau, but there's no old and bold employees of the Bureau.
You get to pick one.
Yeah, so like use that to characterize these lifers who are just like in it because they, you know, they don't know anything else.
The sort of true believers versus the workaday.
Yeah. I mean, like, if you go to a place like that and you can see the oldest house, all the supernatural going on, you couldn't go back to a regular job because it's like, God, this is so fake. It's so bullshit. Like nothing would matter. Like you would just lose.
Well, also imagine the paranoia. That's actually a fun, like that could be a fun way of leading players to a secret like conspiratorial organization is interacting with someone who doesn't work there anymore. Because imagine the paranoia you would have if you know what the Federal Bureau of Control does. and the kinds of risks that they constantly get embroiled in, and the sort of world-ending nonsense that can crop up. But now you have no access to information about what they're doing anymore. Like, what would that do to someone's life? Like, they're going to be screaming about it on the internet and, like, trying to find what, like, it'd be great.
I like that too. Or maybe the Federal Bureau is like, it's like the mafia. You can't leave. Like, you can get a shitty job.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that. Yeah, like that's one of those things where that can. I feel like that's an important decision to make in your conspiracy design. Is can people leave? Like, are they going to get Blade Runner retired? Or if if it is somewhat of a more mundane thing, like the idea that someone could just like quit. Is something that would be realistically plausible. Like, they'd still have like they'd be bound by like not legal non-disclosures and things like that. But like,
or assassins,
or both. Don't break your NDA. There will be legal consequences and or possibly lead injections.
Or in the laundry files, it's like a literal curse. Like if you say, like if you break it, you like burst into fire or something.
Yeah, I guess. NDAs that are magically binding.
But
I like that. That seems like a fruitful possibility for a plot hook.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think use them as they're great antagonists, obviously, but just like it's okay to like, and again, like the whole point of RPGs is to tell a story and have fun, and so like what they are whatever the story demands, obviously. But you can have plausible ways to explain why the bureaucracy is not going to hunt them forever. You know, like the guy who was in charge got fired or got demoted because he fucked up. So they're going to put you on a list. And if they catch you anywhere near their buildings or whatever, they'll shoot at you, but they're not going to hunt you.
It's not worth the effort to come and bother you.
Yeah.
Also players not necessarily knowing that can be fun. Because that could also get player characters in trouble if they don't realize that they're safe, and then they step back into stuff, and then you can tease them later by revealing that, if you had left it alone, they would never have come after you.
Or better yet, they are caught up in corporate politics. Like, they blow up this evil corporate lab, and then like somebody else from the other department is like, hey, good job. Here's where their next lab is. He's like, why are you telling us? It's like, I fucking hate Steve. He stole my budget. He like if his department goes down,
he snapped some funding opportunity out from under me, and I am gonna make sure that guy's heart bursts into flame over the pit of Kali.
He kicked my ass at fantasy football. So
oh my god. Yeah. Oh, the ways you could weaponize petty everyday nonsense into like, and now I'm going to make sure that the gods that hunger from beneath the building feast on them forever.
Yeah. So
teach you to touch my lunch, you mother.
Yeah. And so but there's a lot of opportunities here for like players too. Like
I think like playing from within the organization has a lot of stuff you could have fun with.
Well, you already mentioned one example too, the former employee. Like if you're playing any sort of game where these corporations exist, you could have someone being like somebody who was fired and like was not low level enough that they like didn't try and silence them forever or whatever. And so you make a character with like some knowledge and then just a lot of petty grudges against, the Steves and Karens of the office, whatever. But then you could also do like, you could have a corporate person or someone like there's freelancers, people freelance for various agencies. So like someone who has some contacts,
independent contractors.
Yeah. Independent contractors. Yeah. Sorry. Because Uber isn't in the business of driving people. They're in the business of blah, 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 blah.
It really gives you the freedom to make your own schedule, Ross, and the freedom not to have healthcare.
Yeah, exactly.
And the freedom not to be protected from curses and the evil eye.
Or labor laws. So
Is that not what I said?
Yeah. So make a character. So that's another character concept is like the part-timer, the low-level person, or the person who works from home, and remote worker, freelancer, or whatever. Who has some tangential link to the company, but like is obviously not loyal to them. Like we have moved a lot beyond from the 1950s company man. You're going to be working for this company until the day you die. For get your gold.
You'll still be working there till the day you die. It's just that this time you're not really an employee.
like people don't really have like corporations. These bureaucracies are certainly not loyal to any of the people except maybe some of the executives. But like,
there's no such thing as careers.
Yeah. Well, you have careers by switching companies. Like you get more money by switching to a company because they're like, aha, we can get that person who's very skilled and has 5 years and like, so like, yeah, have so people don't have loyalty to corporations. You can play a player character who works for evil company and then like, yeah, I don't give a shit. Yeah, no, blow up their lab. It's not my department. I don't give a shit.
Actually, something else from the game just popped in my head that could be a good way of introducing players to this, to whatever organization you've designed, which was job fair. Like instead of having the players meet in an inn, have the player like open with like role playing your
the
job fair.
Job fair,
your job fair interview that got you involved in this company or on their radar or something.
Like
that could be a fun twist on just like setting a tone.
Yeah, you can have the job fair that goes wrong, obviously,
or goes horribly right.
Yeah. And of course, another sort of trope is the sort of, like I mentioned, the labs, obviously the experiment that goes wrong. And bad things happen. And, a lot of player character types are like, I escaped from the evil lab and I have weird powers now and they are hunting me. So
they do that.
Yeah, they do that. So, I mean, that's obviously perfectly playable archetype, but think about who's hunting you and why, like what their actual motivation. Are they hunting you to kill you just to get rid of any evidence of their wrongdoing, cover their own ass? Are they trying to extract you, or are they trying to recruit you, trying to get like, no, please come with us, we want to give you a job?
Or is it just that one guy again who really wants to assassinate people?
Yeah, because we also talked about like people abusing their authority, like Darling hoarded knowledge and like kept people out of the loop. So like maybe there is somebody in an executive or a manager who's like just got a vendetta against you, and so like you could actually, as a player character, maybe realize, oh, you know what, I just need to find the right person at the company to talk to. Like I need to find their HR department to be like, Steve, the executive, is trying to have me assassinated. It's like, oh yeah, what, just because you're a lab escape? Oh, we have so many of those, that's not right. Or
even like one of the things that they can make these bureaucratic organizations threatening is that retaliating against the person who's after you can be a big risk because the company eye may be on you. But if your players discover that this person is doing this off the books, like if through research or through investigation or through whatever your game scenario is doing, like that can show that, oh, this person does not have the protection that I thought they did, and that can allow you to just murder hobo your way through the problem if you discover that that's an option. Like that.
Yeah. So
some fun obfuscation to play with there.
Yeah, exactly. So try and think about if you're doing some character who has this dark past linked to a corporation, kind of do some work as a player to build up the backstory of this corporation, at least sort of the dynamics of the department that made you. Maybe not the entire corporation, but like the evil R&D department that made you. That helps your GM. You remember role playing is a collaborative thing. You're telling a story together, and so if you like, here's how this department works, and here's why they made me, and here's why they're hunting me, and so you take it from there, and then the GM can like work something out, and then that gives the GM a lot more like hooks, a lot more tools to make a satisfying story, because like you don't want to do the thing where like the player's hounded forever and there's just like there's never end, or the players have to like assassinate the CEO and like reveal everything to the public in order to stop the corporation. Maybe there's some place in the middle, or maybe you want to go that revolution. I don't know.
There could also be like a misunderstanding or miscommunication in certain ways. Like the player could believe they're being hunted for one reason, but the actual reason they're being hunted is something else. Like it could be, they're trying to kill me because of whatever, and the actual thing is that the company just thinks that you stole something.
Yeah.
But it's actually a paperwork error.
No, you escape from the lab, and the corporation thinks you think they're doing that because you're this lab, you survived their weird experiment, got weird powers, and they want to dissect you because you have your weird powers. But no, they thought you were like working for another company and like stole. You're the one who
they didn't even know you were. They might not know you're a successful experiment. They could have just thought, oh, it's a corporate espionage.
Well, like maybe the lab results were lost. They just saw you leave, and they're like, it's that guy.
See, that's what happens when you don't have multiple copies of the paperwork. That's
again another like inefficiency in the bureaucracy.
Like what can a bureaucracy accidentally swallow up that could cause interesting problems for a story?
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think evil organizations and exploring them, evil corporations and bureaucracies are interesting and certainly like resonate with us because we're surrounded by bureaucracy and
because we are caught in a spider web of power relations that we can't really control. Hooray!
Yeah, exactly. So you should definitely talk about them and definitely put them in your games, but like think about how they work in the reality and kind of model that a little bit in your game because that'll make it resonate more with your players. It'll be more satisfying if it's not like if it's not Cobra Commander. If you're going for like a nuanced game, if you're trying to try and make it more like Control and less like a Skeletor, I guess is my major point. The org chart for Skeletor at the top.
Skeletor at the top, and then the word peons scrawled in barely legible, not even ink, just like scratches with his staff.
Yeah, Cobra had a better org chart than that. I mean,
Destro's up there somewhere, or did he work for Cobra? Was he an independent
Serpentor's
contractor?
above it. Like, yeah, like even
I mean, Serpent. Yeah,
I'm sure there's some G.I. Joe fans will tell us.
Pay into the Patreon to make us make a Cobra organizational chart. No, I'm not doing that.
No, that's hard. I'm sure that's on a family.
That sounds like work. I'm not doing it.
So yeah, I think any final thoughts, Thad?
I don't know. Like to me, a lot of it just comes back to those sort of simple questions of like the connections between both departments and characters within those departments, as well as just the consequences of how the bureaucracy works. Okay. And I think, like you said, I think one of the big things we sort of kept coming back to is that opportunity to go beyond what would happen in a comic book or what would happen in a movie or what would happen in a game that wants to keep these things rooted to reality instead of like collaboratively exploring what could happen if these things kept going, which is something RPGs can uniquely do.
Yeah. So yeah, very good discussion. So when we get back, we'll have shout outs and an anecdote.
Woo!
And we're back. And,
hey!
Yay! It's guys mate. All right. Yeah, we haven't done shout outs. Well, I mean, the last episode was basically nothing but shout outs. But Gen Con.
That's sort of the post Gen Con run, isn't it? Just shouting into the void.
Mm-hmm. But first off, I would like to mention a novel I mentioned actually in our Questing for Answers Patreon exclusive podcast recently, but I want to mention it again. The Ballad of Black Tom, which is a novella which is about it takes the Lovecraft story, The Horror of Red Hook, and sort of recasts it from the perspective of an African American character in it. And it's basically about institutional racism is so bad, people and just racism is so bad that some people are like, yeah, no, I'd rather just fucking kill everybody by summoning Cthulhu.
I like that.
Yeah, no, it's an elegant novel. It's very well written. I quite enjoy it, and like you're like, yeah, no, I can see why. Yeah, yep. So I believe it's written by Victor Laval, who also wrote The Big Machine, which Greg Stolze called the very unknown armies novel, which I did read The Big Machine. Yeah, I agree. It's a very unknown thing. So it's very well written. Yeah, I already mentioned that, but yeah, it's great. If you like Lovecraftian fiction, there's this movement of sort of reclaiming Lovecraftian cosmic horror to make it not racist, to make it like explore racism and colonialism.
Yeah, there was actually that reminds me of a
Are you talking about Lovecraft Country?
No, it wasn't that. There was a short story collection that came out a while ago. Oh, it's called She Walks in Shadows. And it's a collection of short Lovecraftian horror stories by women and about women.
Interesting.
Which I remember, like it has I I hadn't thought of it until you brought that up, because it's a few years old now, but I remember really enjoying it.
I think maybe we actually did review that on the podcast. I'm not sure. I'd have to look it up, but we did review.
So, it is one that I very much enjoyed. If you have not checked it out, it's
I definitely quite enjoyed it. Thad, what is your first shout out?
My first shout out is going to be to a game that I'm not very far into, unlike Control, which I have completed recently. But Astral Chain for the Nintendo Switch. I am only a little ways in, but it is already a ridiculous amount of fun. It's Platinum Games, very, very like Evangelion sort of thing. Evangelion. I always forget how it's actually pronounced correctly, because I only ever remember it from when I read about it in anime forums when I was 10. But but it's very much got that vibe of like, oh, where the most of humanity has been destroyed in a cataclysm, and we have to use these creature things to fight other creature things. It's like weird astral Pokemon Ava thing. I don't know. But it's ridiculous, and I am enjoying it so far, in that it looks like there's a lot of in some ways it reflects some of the things we've talked about here today, because since it is Japanese police, since it's anime, you're also doing some like day-to-day, like more wholesome, like wandering around, helping out in neighborhoods and stuff, like, and also interdimensional monster murder, which seems like a lot of fun, and I'm liking it so far. It's got some style.
Nice.
It is anime as hell, though. Like, so if you're not in for that, you will lose patience quickly.
Well, it's also a Platinum Games game, so if you don't know about those games, they're not quite Dark Souls in terms of get good, but get good.
Oh no, this one actually has a mode that's like, if you're here for the story, this is the mode for you. Which
okay, well that's nice.
Yeah, it seems like a nice.
Bayonetta actually
nice
was. Yeah, Bayonetta wasn't too bad, but like Ninja Gaiden Black, for example, you know.
yeah. different thing.
Get good. So my next shout out is a movie called The Hitcher. This is Rutger Hauer, one of Rutger Hauer's most iconic roles, 1986. It was actually put out by Canon Films, believe it or not. It's probably the best movie I've ever seen put out by Canon Films, because it's a legit great horror movie.
That's not necessarily a compliment.
No, it's like it doesn't deserve to be.
It's a good movie that happens to have been put out by Canon Films.
I would say it's even a great horror movie, because it's kind of got this occult angle to it. It's never explicitly supernatural, but there's just this weird unknown armies kind of vibe to it, where things are just like, it's haunted. Like, it's about this guy out in the desert driving on his way to California. He's in Texas, and then like, you know, it's at night, it's rainy, he picks up hitchhiker, Rutger Hauer, and then we're in the first like 10 minutes, shit is hitting the fan, like things get real. And but the thing is, it has this thing, like, it's not just the desert, it's like the gas station is abandoned. Like there's just these sweeping shots of cars racing through the desert, of just the wastelands, of the barrens. And the Rutger Hauer as the Hitcher, incredibly charismatic actor, you know, incredible presence. Oh yeah. And he is just not, it's not like he's not trying to kill the main character. He's like toying with them, like, and in a way that feels real. Like, this dude is like, Rutger Hauer is fucking crazy, but he's just like, God, he in the first, I'm
gonna describe him as magnetic, I think is a good way to.
It's just, it's compelling. You go to watch him every second he's on the screen, and like, there's it's a very silent movie in some place. Another place that has a great sort of synthwave, or very much an inspiration for synthwave soundtrack. And I quite enjoyed it. It is that I can't believe it took me rest in peace, Rutger Hauer. I can't believe I had to wait until your death to go and see it. But go and see, or like get it on Blu-ray.
Yeah, I somehow didn't see The Man Who Fell to Earth until not long after David Bowie died, which is weird. You
have another shout out.
I do. Actually, I'm going to sub out for something else that popped in my head, because this one was inspired by you. Because you mentioned the trailer for The Wind not that long ago, which is...
Oh, yeah, I need to watch that,
I watched it, like, I watched that trailer when you posted about it on Twitter, at Ross Payton. And I'm helping the brand, Ross.
I know.
It is a it's a Western horror sort of thing. It is one of the most intense and strange and like transfixing horror movies I've seen since The Witch, which I think is a good comparison to it. But it's
kind of the folk horror genre.
Yeah, it's folk horror, but like in
the prairie,
sort of,
not
the prairie, and it's very. Yeah, it's the use of sound is excellent, which I mean, being named after wind makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But I was really glad that you had, because I noticed that it had come out like last year sometime when you posted the trailer. I was like, oh, I'm gonna look into that, and I was watched it, and then just whoa, tense and nuts.
I posted the trailer the day I found it, and I'm like, oh wow, this is really cool because I think I found out about it, and that was the same day Chris Spivey from Darker Hue Studios basically was talking about, hey, what are your favorite Western horror movies? And I'm like, I wonder if there's anything new. And like I stumbled on The Wind when I was looking up Western horror movies to try and give him some recommendations. And technically it doesn't seem like it's actually like, it's not like a Western. They aren't like cowboys per se.
Yeah, it's not what we think of as a Western, but I like it's an approach to it that is like a world that is implied in Westerns, but is not following the exciting cowboy people, is instead like out here in an isolated prairie with a couple of like a husband and wife pair and another husband and wife pair. And that's mostly it. And it's just like isolation and growing terror. It's also very like non-linearly played out. So there's I need to watch it again, actually, because it's still... I'm still not 100% sure what happened, but in a good way.
Ooh, nice. Cool. My next one is actually also a movie. The Dead Don't Die. Jim Jarmusching as hard as he can.
I love when he does that.
It's an ensemble cast led by Bill Murray and Adam Driver as cops in a small town as zombies attack.
Zombies, you say?
Zombies. But, I mean, star-studded cast. Some of them are just for a few scenes, like Selena Gomez, but they have like Tilda Swinton. Let's see here. God, a bunch of people. And Steve Buscemi. And they're just being small town people. And as zombies start rising up. Oh, Tom Waits is in it, of course.
That's a good choice.
Yeah, and it's if you like Jim Jarmusch movies, you'll like The Dead Don't Die.
Is that Iggy Pop? Oh my God, I need to see this.
Yeah, it's star-studded cast. I said star-studded.
And you were not. I mean, I knew some of this, but I just opened the Wikipedia page, and it's like I'm drowning in recognizable names.
And I feel like Jim Jarmusch does what Adam Sandler does, which is like grift film production companies for money, so he can like pay his friends and like make
it's
a shitty... Adam Sandler makes a shitty movie, but like...
Yeah, it's just that Jim Jarmusch knows better people and doesn't suck.
Well, he's also a good filmmaker, so he makes a good movie. It's just very idiosyncratic and very, very much like only he could make. And then he just hangs out with his friends out in a small uptown New York, for a couple of weeks or a couple of months or whatever.
And then a movie falls out.
Everyone gets paid. And it's very interesting. It's definitely a movie I'll watch again at some point. I need to watch Coffee and Cigarettes again, though, first, I think.
Yeah. I think the movie of his I've seen the most is, I think, Only Lovers Left Alive. Because Tilda Swinton and Tom Hiddleston just vamping at each other in multiple senses of the word is just excellent.
Yeah. I know Caleb's is Ghost Dog. That's the one he's seen the most. Which is very on brand.
I believe you mean Ghost Dog: The Way of the Samurai.
Oh,
Ross?
Sorry, yeah. Do you have any more shout-outs?
I have one more, which I thought of because in another podcast that you work on, The Mixed Six, Spencer recently said that he was putting a moratorium on anime recommendations. So too bad for him and that podcast. My anime recommendation. Yeah, my anime recommendation will go to the fine fans of role-playing public radio. And it is Mob Psycho 100, which is legitimately one of my favorite television shows. Like, it has broken the favorite anime line and is up there with, like, just things that I enjoy outside of the restrictions of genre. It's by the same it's based on a manga by One, the same creator as One Punch Man, and it has that same sensibility of taking weird supernatural stuff and mashing it into the mundane, which I feel is also a pretty good fit with today's topic. There is a secret organization that comes up, but it is dealt with in a more of a sideways way, and a lot of it is very much just about like it is one of my favorite shows about growing up. And it's just very charming and fun, and sometimes action packed, and sometimes heartwarming. It's a great little program. There are 2 seasons of it. It's on Crunchyroll and also available in your local retailers.
Ooh. Yeah, I watched the first episode and then like nothing else. That was when the first episode just came out, and so now I need to catch up and like watch the rest of it.
Highly recommend. I actually just shouted out about it on the Role Playing Public Radio podcast.
Ooh. Weird. So that's it for shout outs.
Yes.
But I do have an anecdote. So I have started an Eclipse Phase campaign. The 8th
I feel excluded and heartbroken.
Well, that's because you weren't here. And yeah. Boo. Well, if you were here, that you would definitely be in the campaign. But so it's a criminal boat campaign. I'm not even involving Firewall unless the players really fuck up, I guess.
That makes me so happy.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I don't love the Firewall setup, but like there's so much. Like I've just been pouring up like back and forth through stuff in the second edition book, and there's so much to play with.
Oh yeah, no, there is. We're really getting into it. So the players are the 8th C. They basically, hey guys, let's start a gang, and like they made their own little criminal syndicate. And the 8th C is the sushi restaurant. They have a front in New Shanghai, the biggest city on Mars. And Tom is he's a human in an octomorph sushi chef. So because he's Tom, what part is one job? They're going to take out these safe houses that are operated by rival cartel. They've been hired to take out these one of these safe houses is a warehouse. And they know they take a job with that cartel, saying, hey, we'll help you smuggle some Titan artifacts into the warehouse.
Good.
Yeah. And so they go outside of the city. This is a different city, not New Shanghai, but Olympus. And it's like a crime-ridden poor city with a bunch, and it, because it's next to the orbital elevator. And so basically it's like a port city, but the port is the orbital elevator. And so they meet the zone stalkers who have the artifact. The artifact is like the size of a coffin, and it's like just a big box. But they're like, you guys didn't bring a vehicle big enough for all of us. You just brought a fucking civilian car. So we'll have to go back and get the rover. And okay, so one of us will run out to get the rover, and we'll just wait here with the box. And so, like, it takes the guy like an hour to get back. So I'm like, yep. I just like.
So you trapped them there with a Titan artifact.
Yeah, and
of course.
So weird shit started happening, and the players are like, wait, why can't we talk to him? Well, we can't get really far radio signals out here because we're near a Titan quarantine zone and signals are weird. I was like, no, I want you to get him now. Like, well, he's out there. I want you to contact. I can't. Like, we're just gonna have to wait. And so some players were really not happy about that. And when the box started talking to them, they were like, nope, not listening.
Who did the box side with though?
The what?
Who did the box side with? What did the box think is
smarter? Oh, the box was just saying hello. It was literally just like, hello, I'm here.
I'm a box.
Who are you? And it's just I was just doing a neutral voice for it, and the players were like, nope. Oh, I crit succeed on my perception check. Oh yeah, the keypad on the side of the box moved by 2 millimeters. You're like, wait, what? Like, yep.
You're an evil. You're evil.
Yeah, like nothing overt happened. It's just weird. And like when the thing is, the great part was the other stalker came back. It's like the box is acting weird. What do we do? Oh well, yeah, because the zone stalker who left, the NPC who left, was the only one who knew how this stuff worked. None of the players had any Titan artifact skills or knowledges or anything. So they didn't know shit.
Why would they? They're starting a little criminal cartel. They're a mom and pop shop.
Yeah. And so in order to like get the artifact from being weird, the zone stalker takes off his glove and puts his hand on it, and it's like, okay, we're good. And so the player's like, wait, what? What did you do? Why did that work? He's like, by the way, one of you knows about asyncs because he is an async, but the rest of you are like, what the fuck was that? And so like, yeah, it was a great little moment because everyone was like, nope, and they just couldn't do anything about it. Yeah, that's and also I'll give people a little teaser about this campaign. I'm adding some new house rules for the campaign.
Ooh.
So I'm actually having 8 players in this, 2 groups. So they're all members of the same cartel. And they have rules where they have to establish connections with each other in order, like, why would you trust each other to be in, criminal fucking conspiracy? But the other rule is at the end of the first adventure, spoiler alert for the first adventure, somebody found the 8C restaurant has its own AI that runs the building, runs all the little Roomba bots to repair it, keep everything clean.
As one does in the future.
Yeah. And it's basically like a Muse, but for the building. And it said, excuse me, since all of you have admin access to here, someone, when you were celebrating your first successful job and everything was locked down, there was a break in the security footage. And I noticed a bug this morning when I did my security sweep. One of you planted a bug in here, a surveillance device. And so I'm adding this new mechanic called suspicion.
No.
And so the players, this is the clip phase, you can be a traitor and not know it. You could be total recalled.
Oh, no.
Yeah, psychosurgery, edited forks, all kinds of weird shit could control you.
That's fun. Oh,
and so
I like that.
Basically, every players have a choice. Every player has a certain amount of suspicion that's inherent. And you're basically at a certain point in the campaign, I'm going to make a roll to determine who is the traitor. And that's based on the total accumulated suspicion you've gotten over all these adventures. And nobody can
so
have
at this point, even you don't know who the traitor is.
Well, maybe I do. Maybe this is all just the illusion of free will.
Okay.
Ostensibly, I don't know. It will be random.
As far as we know.
So everyone has a certain amount of suspicion, but at the beginning of each adventure, the players can choose to act more suspiciously or less suspiciously. And that will increase or sort of help set how much suspicion they have. And then all the other players will tell, this person's very squeaky clean. He's being not very suspicious at all. This person's acting kind of suspicious. This person being very suspicious. That's all the players know about. And that's public information. All the players know about everyone. At the end of each, and they can, the thing is so they have a number, but they don't know exactly what it is. During the adventure, they actually spend suspicion like a pool point, like a moxie point or something, to gain certain benefits. And I have little.
But it makes you more suspicious, or makes you look more suspicious.
Well, you have to set your suspicion at the beginning of the adventure, and then you can spend it during the adventure.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah.
So, but then the other thing is, if you have suspicion left over at the end of the adventure, you can spend it to fulfill a secret agenda, because the secret agenda could be like hunting for example, who is the real traitor. So, or maybe you just want to set up a side business and make money on your own. Maybe you want to do this. So everyone
not just going to do this cartel thing forever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not everyone is perfectly you theoretically could be panopticon by your own cartel, by your own PCs, but everyone chooses to go into private mode at certain times because there's also this whole thing is if you are constantly surveilling all your other cartel members, then if any one of you gets caught, all of you get caught. So you kind of have to compartmentalize to a degree. So but that time in which you're hiding from everybody else, you're doing shit on your own that nobody else knows about, you could be betraying the group.
So you're just planting seeds of paranoia in every direction.
Yeah, basically. It's we'll see. I mean, these are new mechanics. I just made them up, so we'll see how it works. But that's sort of the idea is, one of you is a traitor. Will you find out before it's too late?
Nice.
Yeah. So also we're doing I'm taking score rules from red markets and adapting them for Eclipse Phase.
Ooh.
So players are going to make up their own jobs to do. So
nice.
Yep. So that'll be fun. So that's sort of a little teaser about the 8C, which is coming to RPPR this fall or winter, depending on how quickly I get this recorded. So
quarter 4 2019.
Yeah. Something like that. So that's it. But yeah, that has been episode 170, Inhuman Resources. I'm Ross Payton. This is Thad.
Hi, bye.
And again, I am at Ross Payton on Twitter, and you are at Thaddeus Strange or Thad Strange.
Thaddeus Strange.
Thaddeus Strange on Twitter. And don't forget, we are on patreon.com/RPPR. We are also, please rate and review us on iTunes or your podcasting app of choice, and spread the word about RPPR.
Spread our gospel.
Thank you all so much for listening. Be sure to, if you have any questions, ask them on our site or join our Discord through the Patreon and chat with us there. So anyways, thanks everybody. Bye.